Hello artists, it is my favorite time of year, fall, and so we're going to be doing some fall pumpkin drawings today. Instead of just drawing a pumpkin the regular old way, we're going to be looking very up close and drawing an up close picture of our pumpkins today. And so to get started, we are going to go step by step on drawing that up close pumpkin in the center. So follow along with me and I can't wait to see what you create. So when I'm thinking about drawing a pumpkin from a different perspective, I'm going to look at this pumpkin and then I'm going to think about looking at it really close. So close that I am only going to see this very inner section. And I'm thinking about how I see these little shine highlights, these shadows in here, these darker spots, the shape of the stem. And then I'm going to be drawing that up close perspective, taking over my whole paper. Now, this paper is kind of long and the shape of my pumpkin is round. And even though I'm going to keep it with corners, I'm going to zoom in onto that inner square. So the first thing I'm going to do is trim this paper down. So I want you to just pick up your paper. It always helps me to kind of fold a little bit. And it doesn't have to be a perfect square, but I fold it up till it looks about like a square. That looks about like a square to me. So I fold it, and then I cut that extra piece of paper off to get a square instead of a rectangle. And there we go. The next thing I'm going to do is start sketching out my picture. So the first thing I notice is the shape of the stem. It's not like a perfect circle. It kind of goes back and forth. So I'm going to draw, and I want to draw big because I'm thinking about being really up close. So I see that it kind of dips down into those little sections. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to draw that stem coming up, and I'm drawing it real big because I'm imagining that I am up so close to this pumpkin. And then there's like these little sections here. So there is my stem. And then I'm looking at how the pumpkin has all these different sections here. It's not just perfectly round. Now we are just pretending we are so up close that it's taking up the whole page. So I am going to draw one section coming out here. And then another one coming here, and it's kind of like just these big curve lines, and we're just looking at the very inside of that pumpkin, and we're putting these lines kind of going just out to the edges of the paper. I'm going to have this one go behind the stem, and I'm going to have one more go behind the stem right there. And so what we did, maybe I'll have it come out like that. What we did is we tried to draw all of these up close lines that kind of curve out and they go into the middle and then they get bigger as they go out. Bigger. And so I drew them kind of coming bigger. I think I'm going to change this one a little bit because I notice when I look at my pumpkin that they're small, they kind of go out, and so I want that to start small in the middle here and then go out. Now that I've got my up close of my pumpkin, I'm going to start coloring. Now, some people will color a pumpkin just all orange, boom. But what we notice here is that there are many different shades of orange and a little bit of like yellow or white on these shiny parts, and a little bit of brown and almost like a grayish purple in here for the shadows. And the stem even has a little bit of brown and yellow and different shades. So that's what we're going to be doing as we color our picture. So the first thing I'm going to do is add those yellow highlights, those little yellow spots. So I'm just going to kind of put the yellow up here toward the top and then fading out. So I'm not coloring the whole thing in, but I'm just going to put this yellow kind of in every section up toward the top and then
fading out toward the bottom, but I don't need it to go all the way to the end. The next step is adding the orange in around that yellow, but leaving, I'm not pushing very hard. I'm doing it very, very light. I want it to kind of fade in with the yellow, leaving that yellow highlighted spot and then fading to the darker orange as I go down on my pumpkin. Just moving down to the end. Very nice. But I'm leaving that shiny part right there. And I'm going to do that in every section also. Now, something important to think about is that as you're coloring, you're not coloring like a stripe. You're kind of fading the two colors together. A little bit of yellow fades into the orange, going up around and all the way down to the edge. And I'm going to do that in each section. So I'm coming up, I'm just kind of fading it in. The pressure on my crayon is pretty light, and then as I get down here, the pressure gets a little bit heavier, so it gets a darker orange toward the bottom. And I'm just going to finish repeating that process through all the different sections. Okay, so I added that orange, and it's still very light colored. So now I'm going to really start emphasizing that darker area that is where each little section meets. So each of these, we're going to start adding some more shadows. There's a lot of layers happening here. So I'm going to get a darker orange, and on each one of these, I'm just going to start by pushing harder and then pushing lighter, lighter, lighter. And what that does is it makes like a darker area here, and then it fades to lighter in the middle. And I'm going to do that on this side too. I'm pushing hard, hard, hard here on the edge of this, and then I am lightening my pressure to make it get lighter. So I'm not just making a stripe, I'm fading this darker orange into the lighter orange, starting at the edge and then lightening up toward the middle. And I'm going to do that on every section now. So we're just getting gradually darker and adding more of that shadow. So again, I'm more pressure on the edge, light, light, light as I go toward the middle. Just adding that shadow. I turn my paper a lot when I'm coloring just so I can get the angle I need. Pushing harder here, and then it fades to lighter in the middle, keeping that highlight there. So I'm going to do that here, and I'm going to do this in every section. I push hard, and then I push lighter, 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 until it just kind of fades into the color I already have on my page. I'm going to do it on each side, so I go back over here where the line is. I put that harder pressure, and then I'm going to lighten it up, and it adds a shadow, leaving a highlighted section right here. So that's my next step. I'm going to go all the way around and do that in every section until I have this darker orange that fades into that lighter orange and that yellow highlight we had. Now that we've added a shadow around every little curve, we're going to make that even darker with brown. So this is kind of the final step in the pumpkin part, and then we can start working on the stem. So we're going to go down with the brown down that really heavy crevice, and we're pushing really hard with the brown all the way down the line. And then we're just going to kind of color on that line a little bit this way and a little bit this way to show that dark shadow that goes in between each section on our up close pumpkin, that darker shadow there. So we're going to start adding that in between here, right down the line, that nice dark brown. And we're going to add that shadow on every line that we drew that shows the different sections of the pumpkin where they join in the middle. So right now I'm just going to add that to each part. Now I'm going to go ahead and start working on the stem. The stem I'm going to color lightly with brown, very, very lightly, And then I'm going to add in the lines that show the movement of the stem. I see that it kind of twists and turns. And so I'm going to go kind of around the edge here, around the edge of this stem that comes out of the middle of my pumpkin. And I'm going to add some of those little lines I see where it kind of goes up and it twists and turns around here. And so I'm just adding some of these darker pressure lines going up and showing how it kind of twists this way. Some movement. I'm going to outline right here. And then at the end, it almost twists together. So I'm going to kind of do like a little swirly line at the end there, where it kind of twists together. And some of these lines that come down here. All right. And then to really bring in that shadow, I'm going to grab my red. And I see that like where the light hits it, a little shadow kind of goes. See that round shadow? And so I want to have that round shadow back behind where the stem leaves a little bit of a shadow. So I'm going to draw that round area with my red and just kind of put that shadow around the stem where I see that rounded shadow. And I'm going to add a little brown back here too to kind of add to that darker shadow where it kind of fades to a darker spot behind. And there we are starting to really get the up close of our pumpkin, that inside look. I think one more thing I want to add is usually at the end of the pumpkin stem, sometimes you see just a little wisp of some of the vine still on. So I'm going to do like a little squiggly here to show where the vine still connects. And I think I am completely finished with my up-close design of my pumpkin. I can always go back and add a little bit more shadow with red if I want. But really, it's looking really good. We have added our yellow highlight and a little bit of white left. And then in each section, we put that darker shadow. And it's just a very different perspective up close of a pumpkin. I can't wait to see yours. Happy creating.